I moved over about 3 years ago, and I've got my GPPF level 2s and all that stuff. I had a club myself down in London. And when I moved over, I sort of said, would you like me to lend a hand and get involved with running it? Actually, at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the Manx.
I know, that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. So there's a lady called Lisa and Liz. That's 2 women.
You there?
Get rid of that. Don't know. So so I joined in with Lisa and Liz helping out a little bit, but just time constraints and whatnot, I had to back down. But I still take lifters to the comps we have on the island. Hoping soon to branch out off the island soon enough. Yeah. But all good though, all good. Anyway, that's enough about me. Hello, Annie.
Hello.
Welcome to this episode of Outside the Box. We've got Annie Nelson on this evening, and she is an international powerlifter based from Scotland. So hopefully we can find out all about her. So Jake likes to ask a specific question. He's done it for the last few episodes now, so I don't think we should change the habit. I don't know if you've watched any of them since we invited you on. Hopefully not. I'll let Jake ask. He likes to ask this question.
So Annie, what is your first earliest memory?
My earliest memory, ever.
First memory, ever. Could be about anything.
So I was actually very young because it's me and my brother. It's just us two. I've not got any other siblings. He's younger than me. And I actually remember the day that me and my dad went to visit him. And I was 2.5 then. So that's very early. But I don't have many other memories from around that age. It's just that one that's sticking out. But I remember waking up on, it would have been May the 1st, but I don't know what kind of day it was. I just remember waking up and looking for my dad, and my mum wasn't there, and he asked if I wanted to go and visit my new baby brother.
Oh, amazing. And how old are you, Annie?
I'm 28 now.
Yeah, nice. Cool. Okay. So, fair while ago then. That's great.
Yeah, a long time ago now.
Yeah. No, we've asked a couple of the other people that we've had on, and their memories have been a bit stranger than yours. So that's quite a nice one to open with.
They've been much later in life as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
Which is I find weird because I can remember right far back as well, but most people are they struggle with that.
Yeah.
So you obviously said that you've got one sibling. Were you born in Edinburgh?
No, I was actually born in Perth, but I'm from a place called Kinross. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I know Kinross. Yeah.
Kinross, yeah.
Jake might not know.
I kind of describe it as being in between Perth and Dunfermline, more or less. People tend to know those places. So I grew up there and then moved to Edinburgh for uni, came back home for a wee bit, and now I'm back through again.
And so there's 2 years between you and 2.5 between you and your brother.
That's right.
Did your brother, did he follow down the strength sport route as well? Did you have an active family growing up? What kind of sports did you do growing up?
Definitely an active family, and I owe a lot of my success now to how my mum and dad brought me up. 100%. They always got us into loads of extracurricular stuff. I did a lot of. Me and my brother did a variety of different sports, and we were always encouraged to stick at it and don't give up and try lots of different ones as well. So I was always a very sporty child and always naturally pretty competitive as well. But the ones that stuck, my brother played rugby, still does. And then for me, the ones that stuck were dancing, which a lot of people don't associate as a sport, but that is actually a lot harder than what people think. And it's the only training session I've actually passed out in. So
what kind of dance did you do?
I did everything kind of. It was a big dance school, and we did lots of different kinds. We did shows, but then there was also a competitive street dance crew that did all these different competitions, and we went to world championships. It was really cool. Oh my god, you signed up already!
I've done some research here. So
oh my god!
I went right far. I went right far back on your Instagram because I wanted to see when you started powerlifting, and then I was like, "Oh, tremendous! We've got someone that did street dance."
That is so funny because nobody ever like they're always like, oh yeah, dance and whatever. But I'm like, no, I was actually like it was a huge part of my life and it was like very hard.
So Annie, we've got quite a lot of American friends and followers on here.
Okay.
And one of them, Chris, and PK, we've got another one called Philip. They are massively into their dance. Chris is like 87 years old now and he's still doing dance. So he sends us videos of himself dancing in his garage. So yeah, so you've got quite a big fan base there for your dancing. So I think outside of the UK, it's probably a little bit more kind of common than over here.
Definitely.
Both my nieces do street dance. They still do it, and they're like one's 15, one's 14.
Do you know it's really good for building your confidence, especially when you're a young girl. Like I used to be really, really shy, and that helped me so much. So yeah, definitely.
And I seen that said you went to the Worlds. Did you have to travel international for that?
No, it was actually in Glasgow.
How bad's that? You get to go to the World Champs. It's like, oh, we're just going like an hour trip.
Exactly. Luckily it was in the SECC, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, it was only in Glasgow. Didn't have to go very far.
And then where did you go from running then? Not from running, from dancing too. Obviously you went to running. Yeah, I've literally just
So I did them both at the same time. Like I was for anyone listening that doesn't know, I was a sprinter for a while as well. That was, I would say dancing was like my second sport. Sprinting was the main one. So that was 400 meters and 200 meters. I did like some 4x100 relays and things like that. But I did that all through, like I did that before I got to uni. I did that in high school, and then I also did it all through uni. And then I stopped basically not long after I graduated, just because I kind of fell out of love with it. But it lasted me a lot of years, and I did really love it.
Have you going back to that? Have you tried again going to a track recently?
No, but it's funny you say that. I actually can see a track from my flat, and I do sometimes miss it when I see that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's worth seeing how the power you've developed over the last few years might translate back to the track.
Definitely. Like I think I've definitely had like a huge benefit going into powerlifting from having years of sprint training. Definitely, well, not years. It was maybe like 5 years, but still enough to definitely give me a head start.
Yeah, that's what we were going to bring up. We were going to ask like when you were sprinting and what 400s, and what did you say, 400 relays? Did you do 100s or 200s?
200s, yeah.
200s. Did you do a lot of strength training during that time, or
actually no?
Was that happening?
It was kind of like I definitely did quite a few strength and conditioning sessions, but it was very sporadic. Like don't get me wrong, I've always applied myself well and trained hard in whatever I've done, but I definitely didn't train as hard for this and like kind of pour myself into it as much as I do powerlifting. And I think if I did, it would have been different. But I've kind of done like we would maybe do a weight session once a week, and I don't know if I would always be at it. Like I definitely knew how to like use certain machines and maybe do like a very bad deadlift and a very bad high bar squat, but I wasn't really 100% confident in there, but I did enjoy it.
It's funny you say that because I coach on the island. I coach a lot of the track athletes here in our sports institute, and there's definitely a stigma around training with weights and barbells for track still within the sports themselves. I think a lot of that information gets passed generation to generation. It's with swimming and other sports as well, but they're so reluctant to use loaded up barbells for strength pieces. It's gradually getting there. I think the 100 and 200 is less so much. Use a lot of the Olympic lifts like power cleans, but it's always with a trap bar. It's never with a bench is always relatively light and relatively narrow. There's never any kind of transfer over there. So it's always sort of your dumbbell work and, ballistics. But yeah, things haven't quite changed as fast as they probably should do with our knowledge, on how much that does transfer. So no, you're right.
Yeah. I think if you're probably like quite high level, it's very different. But like at my sort of level I was at, I can completely relate with what you're saying.
Yeah. I was going to say it's almost like people are afraid to get away from the specificity of what they're doing because they think it's going to take away. Like the skill transfer, like the sprinting bit, and actual fact is going to make you even better. But at the club level, there's just not that knowledge and coaching unless you're going to go and pay for it privately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You looking back as well, I'm always like, I had quite a few niggles when I was sprint training, and I remember like now that I've got the knowledge that I do, I'm looking back going, you know, probably the S&C stuff would have really helped me prevent all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Part of the kickback that I hear all the time, not just with my people that I'm training and their coaches, it's I don't want them getting injured doing those lifts. And my counter argument is, if they're going to get injured doing those lifts, they probably need to do them more. You know, you're going to prevent a lot of injury doing this strength training. It's just that shift in mentality that we need to find. But you know, we'll get there eventually. But just takes time.
That's it. So, what's your earliest, like, when did you start like squatting, benching, and deadlifting? Then, if you didn't do, like, I know you said you did a couple of dodgy deadlifts and a dodgy high bar squat when you were still running, but what's your kind of first kind of recollection of actually going into SBD? There we go. CJ from Mod Prep he's a doctor, he's a physio, so there more exposure reduces risk of injury. There we go.
Yeah. With the SBD stuff, it was definitely when I just picked up powerlifting. Like I said, when I was sprinting, I kind of maybe did the odd little bits of probably very high and very bad high bar squats. I remember benching with the bar, and it was probably flat back, close grip. And I also remember doing the odd trap bar deadlift, probably something like 60 kilos on it. But I remember like the only time I kind of like really took that seriously and learned how to do it was when I actually just picked up powerlifting. And that was in October of 2018.
Right.
Who was your first coach for that?
My first coach was a guy called Darren Marr. He's got his own lifting club now and a lot of other athletes now. But he was actually my spin instructor at the time. And then I
think I found probably one of like your first kind of, I don't know if it was your first squat videos, but it was definitely in Pure Gym. Was that is that him there, the ginger fellow?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I started off in an exercise for less, and then it was a Pure Gym. And then it was eventually lift, which was a lot better for what I was doing, but I definitely didn't necessarily need it. It just helped.
So do you think you pursued powerlifting because you felt like you had a talent, or did you just enjoy it? Which came first?
It was more just the enjoyment of it, and more like mentally, I just loved feeling strong, and like I have done from a very young age. Like I remember even in primary school when the teachers would be like, "Oh, I need a big strong boy to come and move these chairs." Instantly, something inside me was like, "I need to go and do that."
Yeah.
And I've just always been like that. So like that was something that's probably been like well ingrained in me for a long time. But I basically, when I was doing athletics, when I was maybe around like 2021, I was starting to struggle mental health wise, depression, anxiety, and I thought I'm actually not even enjoying training anymore. Like I need to actually change something here, because training was the one thing that helped me. And I actually thought, well, I quite like feeling strong, and I did like the odd little bit of like weight sessions that I got through S&C. Why don't I just try and do that? So yeah, I just enjoyed it so much, and then I realized that I was kind of naturally strong, which obviously helped push me on, because it's very encouraging when you see yourself improving so much.
And did you find obviously mental health is quite a big a lot more spoken about now than it historically has been. It's not an instant fix, but was it the feeling of feeling strong, powerful, and taking ownership of that? What helped? What was the essence of what you got out of powerlifting? Do you think that helped toward that? Do you think it was the physical? Do you think the mentality behind it was something to do with it?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that go into it. So one is definitely like the empowerment. I think especially like, I can imagine for males it's very similar, but I think especially as a female, it's like, oh, I'm actually strong, and I'm like looking at some of the other men in the gym going, I'm not actually too far off you, like maybe I am good at this.
Yeah.
Obviously when your mental health is in a place like that, sometimes your self-esteem is pretty low as well.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped. And just like, it sounds a bit cheesy, but I've always thought that when you feel strong physically, I definitely think it carries over into like your personal life and everything outside of that.
For sure.
I think it just like makes you strong mentally as well, which is really, I
Yeah.
can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something really special about it. And I've got a lot of friends and clients that I've had the same sort of effect, and it's pretty amazing what it can do.
I think a lot of you can get a lot of that, the similar kind of feel from martial arts. So jiu-jitsu is quite a big, had a big uptake the last few years, but similar kind of thing. A lot of women, especially, taking up the martial arts, and men that have struggled with kind of body confidence and feeling like, strong mentally. I think taking ownership and taking pride in what you do and seeing your body as a tool, it really does help the mind kind of ease off that pressure. So
it's like
no, you're absolutely right there.
Instrument, not an ornament, isn't it?
No, exactly. Yeah. Did
really
you, Annie, did you change your nutrition at that point? Was it something that kind of went hand in hand? Was that something you did early on, or not really?
Not really. Like, I kind of always ate like the pretty average stuff. Like, I don't know, like cereal for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, whatever my mum was cooking for dinner. But now, like, that's totally changed over the years, and I think that probably started to change when I had my first international, which was in December 2021. And then I had my first Worlds the following summer, and I started working with my nutritionist, Jane Jones, just before that, and have worked with her ever since. And that has definitely really helped. And my diet is a lot more different now, but in a good way. It's a lot more varied and heavy focus on macros and micros and things like that.
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask, as because you went up a weight class, didn't you? Did you have to like with you? So did you prioritize food quality as well as not just like, like I see them all the time in the gym. The gym that I work in, it's right, and I'm probably quite bad for it as well. Rice Krispie squares, like you're still getting in plenty whole foods, but I think a lot of people kind of take the piss with the whole like, oh well, I'm a strength athlete, so
yes,
I get to eat this, that, and the next thing. It's kind of like, or do you prioritize? Obviously, we come primarily from like CrossFit, so it's eat nuts and seeds, lean proteins, like fruits, veggies, like actual whole foods. What kind of like approach do you take with your nutrition, especially now since Jane kind of taken over?
I'm definitely more balanced now. I think my relationship with food wasn't great at the start. When I was a 63, I'm in the 69s now, and I still kind of have a few troubles with relationship with food, but it's a lot healthier now, and it's a lot more manageable, and I'm able to kind of nip that in the bud when I notice it happening. But a while ago, it wasn't like 100% amazing. But something that's helped me is like being super balanced. So most of the time, I can imagine you guys are quite similar. Most of the time it's whole foods and lots of veggies, lots of fruit, but I also still have loads of like treat foods when I want them. Like if I feel like I want a bit of chocolate, I'm not gonna, like deny myself of that, because I find that makes things harder. So most of the time it's healthy whole foods, but I definitely still enjoy my little sweet treats.
Yeah, it's always good to be able to do that. I think the difference being between powerlifting and CrossFit, there's no weight divisions. So if you fluctuate now and again and up towards a competition, it doesn't matter. The only person you're kind of going to find out is yourself when you hang from a bar and try and do gymnastics work. It's going to feel a bit ropey. And arguably at the top level of CrossFit, the diet tends to get worse.
I was going to say it's worse in
terms of what you classify as healthy. So the sugar intake tends to skyrocket towards the tip of the spear at the top level, whereas at a base level, at a gym level, we try and discourage people from actively having so much sugar in the diet. So with powerlifting, from my experience, from what I've seen, it tends to be at the lower levels where people aren't too fussed and aren't hitting necessarily weight divisions that easily. The diets don't tend to be that well looked after. There's packets of Haribo, you know, we've all been to meets where there's packets of Haribo brownies, fucking loads of cans of Monsters laying around. Whereas at the top level, it tends to get better.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a bit of a reverse there. But no, it's just interesting your take on that and how it's refined over the course. So was it Jane Jones you said?
Yeah, that's right.
Is she based in the UK or is she abroad?
Yeah, she is. She works with the Strength Guys, which are predominantly American, but she's in the UK.
Right. Okay. Great. Good to know.
Does she run her own company? She got a company that like we could look up and.
Yeah, like she's under the Strength Guys, so you could go and
right. So it's like just like go through them. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I did listen to a podcast like with you on it before. When you mentioned her, I was like, oh, I'm going to look her up, but I couldn't find her anywhere.
It does spell her name differently as well. It's like Jayne. That's probably why you find it.
Okay. We do have a few questions, right? That I'm going to pull up quickly because we can rapid fire them. One of them I'll answer. It's, do women use a female bar? They do not. They use a 20 kilo bar. Someone else asked, are peptides legal? They are not in the IPF. No. They are not in the IPF. What else did we get asked here? I'll try and find it. Oh, someone basically just wants to see you squat. We will bring up some videos after.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I'll tell you what. Before we go back to that, do you have a preference, SB or D?
Oh,
which is your favorite?
Training,
if you have to choose one. Hey, sorry.
Do you think like training or competing?
Let's go competing on the platform.
Yeah. What's your favorite to do? Yeah.
It's a very tight toss up between squat and deadlift. I'd probably say squat because it's arguably my best lift. But I do think it is very nerve inducing because there's a lot that can, excuse me, kind of go wrong in a squat. So deadlift is more fun on the other side of that because you can just not grip and rip. But like there's less.
Also grip it.
But I'd probably say squat actually if I had to pick.
Yeah, I'm the same. But there's a couple of things that obviously squat's your opener. So if stuff's going wrong with squat, the rest of the comp's not going to go too well.
Exactly. You need to learn yourself.
Also, there's no command, is there, at the bottom? So you kind of fly in. Yeah. You're free balling it. So whereas with the bench and the dead, you know where you're at. So yeah, all good.
What do you most like, and what are you working on the most during training? Because
well, I mean, I squat 3 times a week, bench 4 times, and deadlift twice. So definitely benching is what I'm doing most of. But like training wise, I probably do really love a squat session, to be honest. But I do really enjoy everything. I enjoy it all, and I think that's partly why like I'm quite good at it because I do genuinely really love it.
This isn't in our notes, but on the notes of training, like how important do you feel accessory work is? Because obviously people go in and everyone wants to do like their squat and bench and deadlifting, but I don't coach that many powerlifters. I've got a couple, both females, and I'm big on accessory work. But I know I see a lot of people in the gym and they go big on their lifts, but I see them kind of sandbagging accessory work. How important do you think like your accessory work is for actually getting stronger?
I'm actually very glad you asked that because I think more people need to hear it. It is extremely important. Like if you're doing your SB&D work, you can do it as hard as you want. If you're sandbagging your accessories or you're skipping them, you will not progress to the level you should be at. And like if you've got a coach as well, they're programming them for a reason. And if you don't know why they're in your program, ask your coach, why is this in my program? And then maybe if you've got more of an understanding of why it's in, you might find yourself trying a bit harder on it. But when you do try very hard on your accessories and get them all done on the days you're meant to get them done every week, you will progress in your lifts.
Yeah.
Part of that's injury prevention, obviously, for the joints. and the musculature. Have you had any in the last few years? Have you had any injuries that you've had to overcome and come back from?
I have had a couple, yeah. I've been like touch wood pretty lucky. I think it's one because I do my accessories. Two, because I'm like sensible with loading, and I've always had a coach that's been great with that. But I have had a couple that stick out. So like one was just before the Arnold that I did, and I don't know if it's maybe 2022, or maybe 2023, one or the other. That was like my sort of mid back. It just felt like it was kind of every time I was re-racking the bar or putting the bar down after I deadlifted, it was like kind of like spreading round the back of my ribs and like forcing me to exhale. Like it was so painful. And then like at some points I couldn't even like pull my handbrake up in my car, and like going up the stairs, it was like I was like, I'm gonna cry, it's so sore. And like I don't have a low pain tolerance, it was sore. But I spoke to a very good physio that I trust, and he was telling me it was spinal, which doesn't necessarily mean it's any more like sort of worry inducing, but like here's kind of a few drills to do, and it really, really helped. And then also my shoulder can get a wee bit funny. Anyone
that's doing any like benching for any kind of prolonged period of time will get some shoulder niggles, won't they?
Yeah, definitely. And like this was like more than just that. At this point I was like, oh, I can't even get into like a high bar position, this is really sore. But that didn't last too long, and I kind of know the things I need to do to keep it at bay. Like if it's feeling a bit off towards the end of the block, I'll know like where I'm maybe pushing a little bit too hard or something like that.
Cool. So going into that, how long do you actually spend warming up? Because I see a lot of the younger lifters going in and they're straight on the barbell.
I think like it totally depends on the individual and their sort of background. But for me personally, for squats, maybe 5 minutes, and then I'll stick my sleeves on and get warmed up with the bar. But I only need to do a little bit to kind of get the blood flowing, and do a couple of drills before I get onto the bar. Don't do too much. Deadlifts, I always deadlift on a day that I've already squatted anyway, so I'm warm from that.
Actually, you're warm anyway, yeah.
Yeah, but bench, like I do take like I would say a good 5 minutes before I get on that bench. Maybe just over 5 minutes, but it's just kind of a lot of thoracic extension stuff, a lot of breathing drills, banded stuff. I do think that's great for injury prevention, but also helps me get into a really good position on the bench.
I'm just going to bring one thing up. Sorry, guys, hang on. The pedant in the chat, we cannot prevent injuries. Well, I'll be pedantic as well. We can just do nothing. So that prevents it. No, I think it's semantics. Obviously, we know that you can't prevent injuries if you've got a weakness or a small tear that's going to, exacerbate in doing that. I think we all know, it's just injury risk reduction is what we mean. So there we go.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because a lot of the other sports obviously take a lot more time to prep and warm up. But with the static nature of powerlifting, I think one of the best ways you can warm up is to do the bloody lifts, and just work your way through them. Obviously taking care of other bits and bobs before you do that. But
yeah.
And you mentioned something about doing high bar earlier. Was it a conscious decision to do high bar? Did someone recommend you do that, or was the switch over to low bar? Was that something that you got recommended and told to do?
So obviously I was like so new to everything. Didn't really know much about powerlifting. I just thought that sounds like something I would enjoy. Let's give it a go. So I just like, whenever I'd squatted in the past, I'd never done low bar because I'd never been told to do that, and I didn't really notice it being different, if I'm quite honest.
Right.
Obviously I can see it so clearly now, but yeah, I'd just done that, and then I remember seeing people doing low bar in competitions that I was going to, and like I kind of asked my coach after, I think it was 6 competitions, quite a lot. I'd be like, please, can I try that? Eventually I tried it and obviously never went back. I still do like one of my squat days a week is high bar, but like it's obviously not my main way of squatting.
No, yeah. I see a lot of weightlifters, so Olympic lifters. Obviously, they only do high bar because they front squat a lot of the time. But it just pains me to think how much they could lift if they went low bar.
Yeah, I know.
That's
It's
just
like,
ridiculous.
for most people, it's 3 kilos on the bar.
Yeah, exactly. Sean's asked, all right, Annie, I'll let you answer this if you like. What are the benefits of low bar?
So generally speaking, most people can get a lot more weight on the bar with low bar. There's a few different reasons because of that. Obviously, you can use a lot more of your posterior chain when you're doing low bar. And it's also less kind of reliant on your quads. So when you're doing a high bar squat, your knees travel forward a lot more, and you're basically just like not completely relying on your quads, but there's a lot more muscles in your body that you could be using to do low bar. And it's just like a much stronger way of doing it. And I would suggest trying it if you can.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, well, I'm assuming that you've never, ever in your life used a hip thrust pad on the barbell to squat with.
I don't think I've ever used that, maybe in the early days, and I hate to see it. But yeah, I actually hate seeing that now. I'm like, please, my eyes are burning. Use that.
Yeah. When it's because they have it so high up the bar. No, it's funny because I've recently switched one of my young lads to low bar. And I took the time to prep his wrists, elbows, and rotator cuffs ready for that pressure going through. Because obviously, as we know, it's a little bit more strain through that. But he instantly added 10 kilos in a session on a set of 5, rather than has she ever lifted with gloves on?
Yes. Like my first ever deadlift session, there's a video of me deadlifting 100 kilos and I've got gloves on and squat shoes actually to make it even worse.
Amazing.
Mason doesn't like this. Nothing worse than watching powerlifters grind out 10 seconds of low bar squats.
Oh, I have to disagree.
So Annie, we've got
Mason's a bike guy.
Right.
So yeah, he's Mason's a top boy. He's only messing. But there's Fergie here. You'll have to give me Fergie. I can't remember how old you are. I'm not gonna.
He's in his 50s.
Yeah, in his 50s. But he's American. He was at a very, very high level collegiate powerlifter. He might correct me and say he was higher than that, but he was a strong dude back in the day. So he's 62. How about that? But he's a top lad. He's the strongest guy in our group by a margin. So he's on team powerlift whenever we're talking.
I like that.
Yeah. So going back to yourself then, Annie. First year competing. When was your first time on the platform?
That would have been April 2019 at Scottish Uni Championships.
Cool. And do you remember your total from that?
Yeah, it was 317.5, I think.
Nice.
It was. That was in the 63s, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
I've actually got a video here of you doing a squat. Look.
Hey, there we go. Here we go.
115, yeah. I think I went 115, 62, 140, something like that. And then I got called for pitching at like 145 or 147.
And place silver in your first comp as well, which is class.
That's a nice confidence boost for sure.
Mason will like that squat as a high bar.
Yeah,
squat.
Mason love that high bar. Yeah.
I'm just like totally dive bombing into the hole, no control, just pure strength.
That's good. So you went up there. So talk us through your journey from that comp to now. So from 2019 through to now. What was your journey like? Any obstacles along the way? Were you quite a quick transition from that kind of standard up to where you are now? Seems like it.
Well, that was it's only been 5 years, isn't it?
Yeah, 5 or 6, I think, something like that. I guess for most people you could say it was pretty quick. But also like from the start, like I did completely pour everything into it. Like I didn't kind of just go through the motions from the start and just enjoy it. Like I was like, I want to compete and I want to do well. I'm going to do all my training properly. I'm going to listen to my coach. Like it was never half-arsing anything from the start at all. So that definitely went in my favor, of course, because I know a lot of people start it and like to do it for enjoyment originally, which is completely fine. But wanted to compete and I wanted to do well. But yeah, like I had my first competition April 2019, and then I think it was that October that I had my first British, which was British Juniors. My first year competing was my sort of obviously first year doing any comps, but it's also the last year I could do as a junior because I was 23. And then after that, obviously COVID hit, and then I had British Open Championships in 2021 in the September, and I actually won that, and nobody had a clue who I was. Everyone thought someone else was going to win who was ranked first, who always won, and no one kind of looked at me, but I quite liked that.
So did you not compete once in 20? There was no competitions in 2020 at all. So you just went from like October 2019 building the whole time up to then 2021, just kind of like burst onto the scene almost.
I'm not 100% sure. I think there might have been one in January of 2020, and it might have been like an Eastern Districts or something. I would need to check in powerlifting, but I think there was one like just before everything kicked off with COVID, and then I just trained in my garage. Was very lucky to have kit in there, given to me by the coach that I had at the time, which I was very, very grateful for. And yeah, went and won that first British when nobody knew who I was, and then was selected for my first international, which was that December in Sweden. And that was, everything kind of picking up from there.
Amazing.
And did you go straight up to 69s after your first, like after doing obviously your first comp, and then, or when did you go up to 69s?
Actually, so I had that Euros in Sweden in December. Yeah, and then I had the next summer in South Africa. I did that. That was Worlds at 63. And then after that, like I was really struggling making weight for 63. I'll be honest, like it was hard. Like I was sitting at like 69 kilos already, cutting down to 63, and I didn't actually have a lot of muscle. Yes, I didn't have a lot of muscle, especially on my upper body. So like cutting that much weight that early on in the sport alone, never mind the lack of muscle mass I had, was just ridiculous. And I was too lean when it was coming to that. Like I've got a picture before I weighed in South Africa, and I'm looking at it like, oh my God, crazy. But no wonder I had a bad day. But basically I came home from that and my body weight shot up to 70 kilos, and I just like couldn't get back down. And even though it was quite hard mentally, being like, oh my God, I'm 70 kilos, it's so much heavier than what I'm ever used to seeing myself at. I was feeling the benefits of it in my training. And I just thought, oh, there's no way I'm making it down to 63 now. So I might as well just go up and make 69.
Yeah.
To get down to 63s, were you dieting down and then doing a cut, or were you kind of hovering out like a few kilos over and then like actually doing like, water loading and...
Yeah, so I think I would get down to like 66 was like when my body would just like kind of stop letting me lose any weight, and I had to water load, gut cut from there, which I still do. So
yeah, what do you kind of walk around at now for 69s, in the low 70s or
72? Yeah,
so it's not too bad.
In the off season, I can sit like high 72s, but I can cut like as in water load and gut cut from 72 kilos, no bother. But if I can sit just under 72, it makes it a little bit easier when it comes to the cut.
Yeah.
Do you keep an eye on your muscle mass at all? Do you do like body scans, in-body sort of things? Do you keep an eye on that or not?
I actually have never done that.
No.
I just kind of go off like how strong I'm feeling and how I feel I look.
Cool. So one of the things I was going to ask you about, because you coach as well, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So I do sort of amateur club stuff with powerlifting, and I train some young guys and girls with their comps. One of the big things that I find with the amateur side of stuff, especially in the slightly older women, is the reluctance to do strength training, because we've all heard it. I don't want to get big and muscly, right? So one of the things always that we kick back in is, blokes go to the gym with massive amounts of more testosterone than you, and they struggle to put on muscle mass over 20 years of training. What makes you think you're going to do that? Is there anything, do you ever come across that, obstacle with getting people into the gym and strength training, especially women? Or do you think that kind of stigma's sort of phased out over the last few years?
I do definitely think it's starting to phase out, but it's definitely still there. I think the people that have, like come to me for coaching, or I used to do personal training, but I just coach powerlifting now. When they come to me for powerlifting coaching, they obviously know they want to get into that, right? But when it's people outside of that sort of sphere, I think when they speak to me, like, not to sound so obnoxious, but I obviously don't look like a massive Helga thing. Like, I don't look like the Hulk. So I think they look at that and they think, okay, maybe like she trains really hard, so maybe I won't look like that if I do the same. So the fact that I'm not, Hulk super heavyweight, I think maybe helps people that approach me anyway.
Yeah. That's
Do
a
you
good shout.
obviously, do you just coach women? Yeah.
No, I coach males as well.
Males as well.
Big percentage of it is females, but I do have
Yeah.
quite a lot of male clients as well.
Do you find a lot of women come to you and they always think they should drop a weight class? Whereas I always find guys are always trying to get like, oh, I want to go from the 84s into the, I want to go up to the 90s, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to be a 105 next year, and it's like women are always like, they're like walking around it like they're 69 kilos, and they're like, I'm a 63. It's like, no, you're not.
I know. Yeah, I see that all the time, and like,
Yeah.
especially when it's my own lifters, and they're like, oh, Annie, like, I'm sitting at like 72 kilos and I'm going to cut down to 69. And I'm like, okay, but you're about like 5'7", you're pretty tall. You've also only been training like 2 years.
Yeah,
Please
why
don't do that.
your growth and like,
yeah. I'm like, it's not like you need to lose weight for health benefits or anything like that. Like, please, like, I'm trying to tell them, like, it's always your call at the end of the day, but I would be much more comfortable if you just sat where you are just now. Because I know I wasted a lot of my own potential at the start, holding myself back with the dieting, and the psychological effects it can have on you is also not great. So yeah,
for sure. That's a good point.
You full-time coach now. Have you always worked in health and fitness, or what? Like, have you done anything else? Like, well, I know that you've been obviously coaching, but obviously you've only been in the powerlifting since 2019, so you've obviously not always done that as a job. What have you done? Anything else? What have you done?
So I went to uni. I've actually got a degree in translating and interpreting with German and Spanish, which everyone's usually a bit surprised at, because it's so different. And then when I left uni, I worked for 3.5 years at a company doing like German translation. It was a retail company, so I was on the phones to like the stores in Germany and things like that.
Is that based in Scotland, though? Yeah.
Yes, it was.
So you didn't get to go, like, you didn't travel for work.
No, I didn't. But it's just funny how different that was. And a part of me, when I was in school, I was deciding, right, do I go to uni for something like sport and exercise related, or do I go for languages? Because I was always quite good at languages compared to everything else. And then I remember my mum and dad saying, like, well, you can always go back to sports, but going back to languages is going to be quite hard. So I was like, yeah, you're right. And here I am, I've gone back to sports, but I definitely don't regret doing what I did, because I met a lot of amazing people through it. And long story short, I probably wouldn't have started powerlifting if I hadn't done that, because it was through people that I knew and stuff. So
Did the Germans hear the Scottish in your accent when you were talking German?
So it's funny, I've been asked that before. No. So because I think if they'd spoken to me when I was in my first or second year of uni, they definitely would have. But after I went away and then worked a bit more with my German as well, like in my third year, you have to do a placement well, I did it in Austria, but you could go to Germany.
Nice.
Basically, when people were on the phone to me and they didn't know me already, they would ask where I was from, because they thought I was from like Holland, because apparently they sound almost German, but there's something not quite right. Apparently that's what I sounded like. So
good. Yeah,
Has that come in handy when you're traveling for international comps? Or is it something that you don't really like use all that much, like day-to-day life now?
I don't use it much, no, but I have used it at internationals before. My Spanish is extremely rusty now, so whenever I do have to use that, I'm like sweating, but my German's totally fine. So like I have used it with like the Austrian team before and stuff. It's pretty cool.
No, that's cool.
So Annie, I've a bit of a tangent here. We had one of our friends, Chris, his daughter is just broken into Team USA for weightlifting. She's an incredible young woman. She's a type 1 diabetic. And one thing that we spoke to her about was managing her insulin, her nutrition, her hormones. One thing I was going to ask, when looking at your profile, you did a podcast a little while ago and you talked about training around your menstrual cycle. So one thing that I certainly have very little experience in coaching with, I have a lot of female clients, but I don't really, delve into the semantics of it all. I know Jon's got a bit of experience coaching this. He's done, some qualifications in it, I believe. But
I'm very lucky that one of my clients is she's a specialist in like female health. That's her whole thing. So it's like any questions I have, I can be like, ask her.
So yeah. we spoke to Ava about with her weightlifting, how that impacts. Obviously, she has another obstacle with the insulin management. But for powerlifting at your kind of level, do you adapt your training around your cycle? Is it something that you've done for a while? Is it something you've recently taken up? Would you mind talking about that for a little bit?
Of course, yeah. I personally don't train around my cycle at all, because I thankfully have a pretty standard cycle. Like I don't have any health issues with that, touch wood. So my thought process behind that and my logic behind not changing my training around it is, well, I can't change it if it's comp day. So
yes.
I have to be used to training around my cycle whenever I need to. So like luckily for me, that's not a big issue. Like I don't have, a lot of people struggle with things like endometriosis, PCOS, things like that. It makes it a lot more difficult for them. But for me personally, I'm able to just kind of train as normal and just, more or less have to suck it up when I go into the gym. But I totally appreciate that not everyone can do that.
That's it's good. It's nice to hear that, because there's so many people now online and in the fitness space that are trying to tell everyone, here's how you train during this phase, here's how you should train during that phase. And it's like, you might need to do that, but you don't have to, lower the intensity just because it's someone said online that's what you should be doing. It's like, if you feel good enough to go in and carry on as normal, carry on as normal.
Yeah, exactly. Like just go off how you're feeling, because a lot of people go into the gym being like, "Oh, I've just started my luteal phase. I'm going to feel absolute crap when I'm in here." But actually, they're okay. Excuse me. But actually, they're fine and they're better just kind of going off how their own body feels, because everyone's totally different. But I think that's maybe getting some sort of influence from the strength training community that don't compete.
Yeah. We had a little bit of it with Paris last year. I remember, I think it was the semis where Dina Asher-Smith quite publicly in an interview after said, I was feeling rubbish going into that because I'm in a really bad phase of my menstrual cycle. And it was the first time that the BBC had ever had that spoken about at a race. I think at the time it was a little bit more kind of spoken about for about a week or so and then all forgotten about. But I a lot of my clients that I work with are slightly older women who are, perimenopausal or going through the menopause. So discussions with them about training obviously varies as well. It's quite a big topic, and there's a lot of I don't know about your own experience, but I would probably say majority of the people that I work with for powerlifting and with CrossFit are female. It's definitely a majority. So it is something that I think, especially being a male coach, I don't have to consider that for myself. But it's something that I think a little bit more education on would be handy in our kind of industries and working around that. So no, you're right though. Everyone's individual, so we do need to take that into account as well.
How do you balance like your competitive life with your social life? Because I don't know who follows you on social media here, but it looks like you've got a very good social life as well. But obviously that's mixed in with all of your training. So how do you balance, like, obviously going to worlds, like for British Euros, but still kind of having that balance? Do you kind of switch off when it's like when you're so many months out from a comp, or do you kind of still trying to sprinkle in a bit of a social life when you're leading up to a comp?
So I'd say like generally speaking, training's always a priority. I never miss a session unless I'm really, really ill. And I've only had to do that just recently in December for the first time in ages. Like, I don't miss sessions. And, you know, like everything's always in line. Like my sleep, nutrition, hydration, everything. Like everything's in line for my training to go well because I want it to.
Yeah.
And then if I can fit in some social bits where I can switch off, which I also find is really good for recovery, just switching your brain off.
Yep.
Then I will. But like when I'm around, I would say like 10 weeks out, I stop a lot of that. I just kind of like don't do as many social things. I do little bits, but I especially wouldn't drink. And like when I'm like, you know, making plans with people, I'm making sure that I've also got time to just like chill on my own and like.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you find it like even like mentally draining, even trying to fit in everything that you've got to do, and then you're thinking, oh God, I've got such and such at the weekend.
Yeah, exactly that. So I'm generally a bit like that anyway. So
yeah.
I think like when I get closer to competition, I am definitely like more inclined to say no to certain social plans because like selfishly I need to be like that for that time just so that I'm like the most recovered and chilled out and like in the best little headspace I can be for like my upcoming training week or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Good.
Cool.
Another tangent, Annie. That obviously one of the most important parts of training, music choice. So when you're training, do you train with headphones in? Are you allowed to train with headphones in? Is it something that you prefer to do?
Yeah. So I definitely I use them all the time really, but like I don't find it impacts me when I'm not allowed them on the platform.
Right.
And I've done it the odd time where I've had them in training and then taken them out to do the lift.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I listen to probably not what people would expect. I love a lot of like Korn, Metallica, Limp Bizkit, that sort of thing.
We're both big Korn fans. I was literally about to say he's got a Korn t-shirt on right now.
I thought I noticed that at the start and I was like, Korn t-shirt. Yeah, I love a bit of that. I try and keep it for training because when I listen to it outside the gym, I get myself up and I'm like, more to put the energy. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, good. Yeah, driving down a country lane in like bloody Ayrshire and you got bloody Korn blasting or Slipknot comes on and you're like raving.
Yeah.
That's how I drive. That's how I drive everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm really angry heavy metal music.
And Annie, this year, so obviously we're at the beginning of the year now, but what comps have you got lined up for the year?
This year I've got well, originally I was going to be doing Euros, which is in 5 weeks, but I actually ended up pulling out of that a while ago because I was looking at my whole year and like how I wanted to be strong for later in the year, so I pulled out of that. But anyway, I'm doing World Championships in Germany in June, and then I've got World Games in August in China.
Yeah, I seen you announce that on your Instagram.
Yeah.
The German will come in handy.
I know, I was thinking that, like, perfect.
Yeah. So, Annie, where exactly is that in Germany?
Chemnitz. It's kind of near like Leipzig area, if you know where that is.
Yeah. So we had CrossFit had one of their big events there a couple of years ago in Leipzig. So
really?
that was handy. So So no, I'm looking at venturing out and going to a couple of international kind of not competing myself. I'm well over it now, but just with maybe one of my lifters. And I think just going to visit and watch your level of your standard of competition really gets a lot of younger lifters fired up.
Yeah.
Which was going to kind of lead me on to the next question about kind of the future of powerlifting. So I know it's a very big, broad question there, but over definitely the last, I would say 6 months, maybe a year, there's definitely been a modernization within powerlifting. Obviously, we had a couple of issues over the last couple of years with at the top, you know, the kind of organization, the admin level, but I think they've helping to modernize quite a lot. One, have you noticed that difference from an organizational perspective with GB? Have you felt a bit of a shift there the last kind of year or so? And secondly, what do you think the future of powerlifting looks like? Do you think it expands? Do you think we get more funding? Do you think it attracts a different crowd moving forward?
Yeah, so like from an organizational perspective, there's definitely a lot more members now and a lot more interest, which is great. And Scottish powerlifting, I've had to put on, and British powerlifting as well, a lot more competitions that are accessible for first-time competitors, and just a lot more because everything's selling out, and it's like people can't
it's impossible to even get in them. Yeah,
it's really difficult. So like Scottish powerlifting in particular have done a great job this year of putting on a lot of opportunities. Like when you look at the calendar this year, it looks great. So they've done a really good job of that. And obviously they're all volunteers, so it's amazing that they've done that and given people a lot more opportunities. I think the future of it, like hopefully we will see like continually more funding and becoming more of a professional sport as well. As for like the type of person it's attracting, I do think that like the female side of things will increase as well, which is great because we're slowly all kind of tearing down this narrative of like you need to look like this to be a female powerlifter, and it's like total stereotype. And I think young girls are now being encouraged to go into the weights room and learn how to do it and not be scared of just picking up weights or, you know, thinking I'm going to get bulky or anything like that. And actually realize the mental and physical health benefits it can have for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think we talked about this a little while ago, but with British weightlifting, who I'm involved with, a main driver over the last 10 years has been the CrossFit gyms. So the interest, the tickets, the events, the participation across all the age groups, M1 up to M4, we've had a massive uptake for weightlifting and platform via the CrossFit gyms. Not so much into powerlifting, I don't think. However, there's definitely been much more of an interest from coming through from the CrossFit gyms into powerlifting. That's one crowd that Jon and I are specifically interested in, and getting some platform time. And even at the top level, a couple of years ago, a guy called Justin Medeiros, who won the CrossFit Games globally, he and another lady actually took part in a US powerlifting competition to get platform experience in SBD. I don't think anything quite matches that experience. You know, with weightlifting, it's a lot more explosive. It's a lot more, you know, there's a lot less in terms of communication from judges and commands. But with powerlifting, I think there could be a massive driver there from the 500 or so CrossFit gyms we've got across the UK to get numbers into powerlifting. I certainly do try and encourage people to do that. Especially the slightly older folk, where weightlifting isn't necessarily going to be a big thing for the older people. And I say that, you know, someone that's just about to turn 40. So, but yeah, no, it's interesting seeing the uptake, but we'll see, won't we? I guess over the next few years.
Yeah.
You see yourself getting involved with GB after you finish lifting? I know we're a long way yet, and powerlifting can go in, you know, well into your 40s, as we've seen from the Masters comps the last weekend, where GB absolutely dominated. Do you see yourself moving into the GB coaching arena at all? Is it something you'd want to do?
Yeah, definitely. I've actually done a couple of bits. I went away with the GB junior team to Czechia in October last year. I was lucky enough to go away and get a lot of coaching experience handling those guys who are very, very talented. And then before that, I've done a couple of bits where I've been lucky enough after competing, I've been asked if I would like to be on the coaching team to be an assistant handler for some of the rest of the team for the last couple of days, which has been great. But yeah, to answer your question, I definitely would really like to do that and be part of the coaching team. So I'm very lucky that I've had a little bit of experience now. So hopefully by the time that comes along, I've got a lot more experience under my belt with that.
Was that with Alex?
Yes.
That you went with? Yeah. Okay. No, I worked a little bit with Alex about a couple of years ago. He was on the coaching course, the level 2 that I did a couple of years ago with Lawrence Farncombe. So yeah, no, there's a really good bunch of guys in the, and I think that from a management perspective and the coaching perspective, GB have got a hell of a lot of talent there and young blood coming through, including yourself. So that can only be a good thing, you know, having lifters that have been very, very successful on the platform coming through and showing the younger generation that, you know, it's a very viable sport and an option to do.
Yeah.
All good. So yeah, Jon, got any final thoughts?
No, but we should show. Everyone's been wanting to see these squat and deadlifts, so we should pull them up, because otherwise Bill is gonna not be happy. So we'll bring up. What one's this? This is This was 220 you squat, or no, 207, 2705. Yeah, there we go.
The heaviest squat ever done. Yeah.
Woof. Woof.
Which is insane.
There we go.
Yeah.
It is 2.5 kilos more than my top ever squat.
So Annie, question.
I don't want to be honest with you, but
question for you then. Last question for me. My squat's my favorite, so I love the squat. Do you have any rituals on the platform?
Oh, that's
when you squat.
I don't know if I would say I have any rituals, right? But I've got like a kind of routine. I don't know if you'd class them as the same thing. But I do it without even thinking.
Right.
Like when it's comp day, like I'll obviously have my headphones on. I keep them on, right? And then I like to take them out myself. I know a lot of people like to have their coach take them off. I like to take them out myself, and I like to hear like the referee say bar loaded. I don't know why it's a thing. I just like to hear them say it. I think that's why I like to take my headphones off early. And I like to hear like the person before me finishing their lift. So maybe something about hearing the crowd, hearing the commands, hearing 3 white lights, whatever. I don't know what it is, but I always do that. And then I'll go out, and before I squat, I'll take a little minute, like before I step onto the platform, but then I'll put both hands on the bar, and like my arms are, it's hard to explain. You've probably seen some of my videos. My arms are kind of straight and my legs are straight behind me. I'm like on my tiptoes, like kind of leaning on the bar, and I'm just kind of looking down. Like I don't even think about doing that. It's just like ingrained in me so much now. So I just like take a couple of seconds to like just feel the bar a little bit before I get underneath it.
Do you do that in training every time as well? Or is it just when you're going for a bit? Every time?
Well, not when it's like 70 kilos or like 120, something like that.
I was going to say, do you treat the lightweights like that as well? Like when you're, or do you just kind of get underneath and
I definitely like move them and set them up with the same intent, but I don't need to do that. Like I would say when it starts to get like kind of heavy, I subconsciously start doing that. Same sort of setup. And all, like little things, I always flick my hair out my face at the exact same point every time. Robotic.
There's certain things as like people that you'll do. It's become like kind of like that ritual around your daily life, but it always fascinates me, these little like kind of nuanced little rituals that we do just to keep ourselves appeased. You know, it's going to work. It's confirmation bias. Do you know what? It worked last time, so it's got to work this time. It's the footballers running out or rugby players tapping the floor and looking at the sky, you know.
Like you don't even think about it. You just do it and you're like, wait, I do that every time. Do you have any rituals?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
So I do you know what? I've got to be really careful because my dad's clinically got OCD. So he's tied up with it, you know, highly medicated. He's been, you know, quarantined and blah, blah, blah for it. So I've got to be careful with it because it's obviously in there somewhere, but I have to have those routines. I have to have those rituals. And I never miss it. I'm 40 in a month's time. I've been squat SBD since I was about 13, 14. And over the course of 26, 27 years of doing it, just they're in there. I can't load up a heavy squat without having done my feet directly underneath, hands out, arms straight, come under, stretch the hamstrings, big deep breath, walk out, 1 foot, blah, blah, blah. Everything. It's a routine and it's confirmation bias, you know, and it worked last time. So it's worked now. It's just funny. It's one of those little bits that I think all lifters, and all you've got to do is go to one powerlifting meet and just sit and watch, and you'll realize everyone's got them.
It's quite interesting, all the little things that people do.
Absolutely. Well, Annie, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you very much.
Really appreciate your time. And Jon put me put me on my radar, but I'll be watching very closely this year, and hopefully I get to meet you in Germany in June.
Yeah, you'll need to let me know if you are actually heading over there.
Yeah, that'd be great. And hopefully, if you don't mind, we can have you on later in the year after Germany. We can have a chat about how you got on and how your training's looking for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that'd be nice, and hopefully I've got some positive reflections and good news for you.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Right. Thank you very much, Annie. Hang on, because once I end the stream, we'll say our goodbyes. But thanks for watching, guys. There we go. That should be it.